Hello, everyone. Welcome to Conversations with Rudy Rivera. I'm excited today to have as my guest Jason Levin. Jason and I have known each other for quite some time. He is an executive coach. He helps people become more successful professionally, based in Washington, D.C. And Jason and I met a few years ago through the ACC. And one of the reasons for my interview with Jason today, because he has a new book out, Relationships to Infinity. And I've always been a big believer in that relationships can help you. Relationships can help you advance professionally. I think, Jason, your book is an incredible book. I think the way you lay it out, it's easy for somebody to follow. So I want to get to it, Jason. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what I haven't said, and also tell me what inspires you to write this book.
Well, Rudy, I appreciate you, and you're very active in the Association of Corporate Counsel. I'm thrilled that the ACC could bring us together. And I'm thrilled that, we get a chance to talk today about a topic that's near and dear to my heart. Relationships to Infinity was always an idea in my head, even when I started my speaking and training business 11 years ago. And I think the reason I finally sat down and wanted to do it is that during the pandemic, there was such a shift in how we felt. We felt alone, we were miserable. And so I said, you know what, now's the time to finally, dive into it. And at the same time, and I feel really lucky that over the years, people will say, Jason, write a book. And I'm like, I have a book. It's called Relationships to Infinity. But a journalist at Bloomberg who had done some segments with, she said, listen, there's this book writing class through Georgetown. It's called the Creators Institute. I wrote my book through it, and I think you should do it too. And so I signed up immediately. And that's how I got it out the door. And it was, I understand now why it's so many people want to write books and can't, because there's such an emotional piece to putting something out there. Putting words to page is really, really hard. And so I think what was great about the Creators Institute is that it provided accountability. And I also am very blessed that my wife is an author. She wrote a book called Back to Work After Baby. And so she was my copy editor. So books are never written in isolation. Books are always a team sport. So I feel lucky that it's out in the world.
Well, it is a team sport, but it's very painful. For me, for example, you can ask me to get in front of 1,000 people and sure, not a problem. But you ask me to write something, I agonize over it.
Sure.
I guess it's a question of what's your poison, things you like to do versus things that, not that I can't do it. I've written articles before they've been published, but it's just a more painful process, especially when you get stuff back from the editor and you think, oh my God, I sound like an idiot when I wrote this.
Yeah, it's, you have all these ideas in your head, and then you say to yourself, all right, well, let me write this down. And you look at your first stuff, and I look at my first initial drafts of chapters, they were terrible. And so you really need to lean into the sword every single time that you're like, all right, this is what I want to say. How is it landing? And the great thing about the book, the great thing about the book class, the professor, Eric Custer, always talks about books are not written, books are rewritten. And the more you get comfortable with that rewriting process, the drafting process, the iteration process, the more you're writing and you're editing and you're getting to that better text. So it feels good.
Well, let's get into your book then. You talk about, well, there are a number of chapters. You showcase a number of people who've been very successful, but one of the things you talked about is the social fortress.
Sure.
And tell us what you mean by that and why you think it's important.
So there's this academic concept known as the social fortress, where when in times of pressure, where we need to make decisions, we close ourselves down in our head and in our hearts, and we reach out to only the people that are closest to us with this decision we need to make. I need to build a professional service practice. I want to, get a promotion. I'm looking for a new job, any of those kinds of things. And so we actually underestimate the types of people that could help us. And actually, the research shows having a more diverse set of people can be more beneficial to making that decision. So getting beyond this notion of being in a social fortress is just so critical. And I've seen this time and time again where people say, I don't know anybody. I don't know who to ask, or I have problems asking for help, or I'm not that important. And so that's why I wanted to put that out there, that this is, it has a name, and that it's real, and that people feel this.
But it's almost like a self-sabotaging thing. You almost feel like I'm not worthy. Or why would these people want to help me? Who am I for them to help, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was doing a training last year for a hospital system, and there was this one vice president. I mean, he had a team of 25 across the US, and he confided to me, I don't think I'm that interesting. And actually, part of his development program to go from vice president to the next level is to build out his network. And so it was all in his head that he didn't think he was memorable. He didn't think he was important. And after we had done the training and we talked through some of the concepts, he actually direct messaged me a few weeks ago. He's like, actually, I'm working on it. I'm getting better. It's not natural, but I am getting better at it.
Well, you have to take your personality and relate to your context according to your personality.
Sure.
Otherwise, you end up being false, or you don't seem to be sincere. Perhaps that's a better word.
Yeah. No, I think you're right on the sincerity piece. And then we often talk about the poles. Either we think either you're an extrovert or an introvert. And, based on that personality type, you're either good or bad at maintaining relationships. When in reality, it's the people in the middle. It's the ambivert that is the one who can listen, like an introvert does really well, and can outreach to people like an extrovert. And so all people really want is a conversation, right? They want somebody to.
Exactly. And that's why my channel's Conversations with Rudy Rivera, because I want to have these conversations.
Yeah, because I mean, at the end of the day, Rudy, we want a human being in front of us that can just be present enough to hear what we said and respond back to that, right?
Well, and I don't think anybody should ever think they're not interesting, because I think every life is a story. It's a world.
Sure.
If you sit down and talk to anybody, I am sure everybody, there would not be one person who didn't have some fascinating part to their life, or at least a fascinating story. And that is always interesting.
And that's always a great conversation piece. It's like, tell me more about that. There seems like there's a story there, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's get to something very, very basic. Most people are afraid to even talk to somebody.
Right.
When I'm on the plane, I see people the whole time right next to each other. They don't talk to each other. Don't even say hello.
Right.
I see it at work. People walk by without saying hello. The first step to building a relationship is say hello.
Yeah, and I think that what's happened in the last few years,
even to a total stranger.
Yeah, I think in the last few years, we've been more isolated. And so, what I've been noticing is just people feel more awkward than usual because they're out of practice. We're out of practice saying hello. We're out of practice engaging with one another. And so, often I'm just talking about, give grace to yourself, give grace to others, and give people the benefit of the doubt, because you don't know what people are going through.
Well, Jason, one of the chapters in your book is what's the right way to connect.
Sure.
And this leads into that part, that chapter.
Sure.
How do you connect?
Yeah, the social science on connection and reconnection is really interesting. And it really comes down to two basic things. The first is the research on nostalgia is just so fascinating that as human beings, we actually crave to think about times that seemed more simpler, right? Or there was a time where, you were in high school or in college or that first job where this one thing happened and you're nostalgic for that moment. It's actually a very human thing to do when we're uncomfortable. So we become nostalgic, our brains become nostalgic as a way to cure or calm ourselves down. And what's interesting is that organizations are now using nostalgia to build connection in teams. They're using nostalgia to create better relationships. And so how to connect with somebody you haven't been in touch with, or how to connect with someone, is actually being nostalgic, sharing a memory. So sharing a memory is actually the most authentic and genuine way that you can actually connect and reconnect with someone, right? Just last night, like completely unexpected, one of my buddies from college said, "Hey, listen, I'm in town for business. Can we get together?" And like a really good friend. He was in my wedding. And like the whole evening was just nostalgia, right? And you felt so good afterwards. So
it was as if you had never been apart. It's as if you've never been apart.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, and I've known him since the mid-90s, right? And we hadn't seen each other because he lives in Miami, right? And so he's busy, I'm busy. And it's very, very few people that can text me at like 4 p.m, "Hey, I'm in town. What are you doing tonight?" And he's someone that, I dropped everything for. But so one, connecting and reconnecting via nostalgia. And then two, something that people often ignore, and it's something I say to, as much as I can, it's the gratitude piece. Who has helped you in your life? Who has helped you in your career? Who and how can you thank the people that have helped you along the way? Rudy, the number of executives that I've interacted with where they say, I sponsored this person, I mentored this person, I made an introduction for this person, I never heard from them again. And so you look at the two levers of gratitude and nostalgia, and you have a real authentic approach to connecting and reconnecting with people that you already know, you already like, you already trust.
And that's the low-hanging fruit. We have an interesting comment from somebody on LinkedIn, and that is so true. Say hello and the curious, how are you?
Yes.
Now that word is interesting. Curious, how are you? People are walking by, "Hello, how are you?" And they say, "How are you?" as they're walking past you.
Right.
They really don't care. They're just saying it to be, you could use another word like, "Hey, hello, Argentina," for all that matters, because the "how are you" makes no sense. And I think be sincere about saying hello, and be sincere about being nostalgic. We also have a question from Steve Sackler. Isn't there also a generational divide about just picking up the phone rather than texting? And Steve, that's one of my pet peeves, because people don't seem to want to talk anymore on the phone.
Yeah.
They will text you right away. It makes it a little more difficult to build relationships. So how do you get around that, Jason?
You do. So you do have that generational divide, right? So as a Gen Xer, I remember getting my first email account in the late 90s. And so the interesting thing where the social science shows is that, back to gratitude and connecting and reconnecting, when you share a memory or you share your gratitude, people don't care how it's received, right? So if you're going to thank somebody and you want to do it through a direct message or a text or an email, people are equally happy to receive that. But I do agree with you that the art of the voicemail or the art of just picking up the phone to talk to someone is a lot harder because, and we were talking about this before we went on, where are you? I think the hard thing about being hybrid and virtual is we don't know where people are. Are they in the office? Are they traveling? Are they in their home office? But my overarching approach is, well, be intentional. Try a medium. And if you want to pick up the phone, then do so. But at the very least, you should say, you know what, I would like to talk to you, and see how the other person responds.
Steve has another comment. I will add that I usually have to text my 20-something-year-old kids 20 times before they'll talk on the phone.
Yes.
So be persistent. Be
Yes.
persistent.
Yes, and I'm in that camp also. There are folks that, you never know what medium reaches them. For some it's direct message, for some it's text, for some it's email. But at the end of the day, here I'm going to show my favorite technology. My favorite technology is actually sending a postcard. I love sending postcards because that they're actually going to get read. So, I think a handwritten note, and I know my handwriting's terrible and I still don't care. So I think
people are happy just to get a note.
Yeah.
Because it takes effort to get the paper, write it, sign your name, get a stamp, and take it there. It takes a lot. Takes more effort than just a quick click of the keystrokes.
No, I mean, what we're talking about, Rudy, is effort, and really making effort. And I think at the end of the day, that's what we all can do a better job of, is just putting in a little bit more effort to our relationship set, right?
Well, that's true. It's all about the effort. You've only got so much time in the day.
Sure.
And you can't put the same amount of effort into all the relationships, but you have to figure out a way to prioritize them.
Sure.
And you may not get to everybody at once, but eventually at some time you want to get to everybody.
Sure.
It's just a question of prioritizing. I want to talk, Jason, about the Bermuda Triangle, which was, I found it fascinating in your book.
Sure.
The Bermuda Triangle of lost contacts. Explain to our audience what you mean by that.
So having done enough trainings on relationship building and keeping in touch, I kept on getting these people like, oh, I can't do this. And here's all the reasons why I can't connect and reconnect. And so I had this, this image, just, like planes and ships would get lost forever in the Bermuda Triangle, that we all have our own personal Bermuda keep in touch triangles. And so I wanted to see, what were the emotions that people were feeling and why we had all these barriers to reconnection. So I reached out to the mental health community. I looked at the research. I interviewed psychiatrists and psychologists. I said, what's going on here? And what came out from that are 3 normal emotions that make your triangle. It's guilt, fear, and worry. So guilt is a feeling of shame or regret, where you think you're responsible for not connecting or staying in touch with that person, right? When in reality, probably the relationship fizzled. Fear, we're afraid of looking dumb. We're afraid of not being remembered. We have all these different kinds of fears, right? And then we're worried about, what might happen, right? And so you live in this world of, I want to reconnect, but then you hit your triangle and that's your barrier. And that's why you're not reconnecting with that person, because you're going through all these normal human emotions that I felt like needed a name, right? And so therein lies the Bermuda Keep in Touch Triangle.
And I agree wholeheartedly. We put ourselves in that triangle quite often.
Sure.
And that's another, I guess, means of self-sabotage. We can't because,
Yeah, we come up with all of
can't.
these reasons why things won't work, which is it's normal human behavior. So
it is human behavior. And so what advice would you give to somebody who is in that triangle? How would you say get out of it?
So there's a couple of social science backed approaches that you can do to actually say, I've been meaning to reach out to this person, but I'm in my triangle and I need to get out. The first is reframing. So instead of saying, this person doesn't want to hear from me, to going to a nostalgia-based approach where, you know what, we had some good things together. They probably do remember. They probably do want to hear from me. And so reframing is an excellent way of approaching it. Second, it's the mini goals. So I'm not saying get back in touch with every person that you ever met. I'm saying, let's start with, today is Friday. Why don't you pick one person or two people that have favorably impacted you, that you've been dying to share a memory with or get back in touch with? So setting mini goals, you know what, I'm going to do one a day. I'm going to do one a week. And then begin to identify those people with intention. And then the third piece is write it down. Write it down. Write down what you're worried about. Psychologists call this the most likely scenario exercise. And so you move away from the amygdala, where you're afraid of things, to the logical, where you're saying, all right, I want to reach out to this person. Here's what I'm concerned about. What's the most likely scenario? And the more you write down what possibly is going to happen, you're probably going to get to a point where it's like, you know what, I'm going to write to this person and they're going to say, okay, it'll be good to hear from you. So
well, we have two really good questions from our Zoom audience. However, it's a two-way street. If the other party does not acknowledge, then what do you suggest? Leave it alone or insist?
So I think that, and I agree, it is a two-way street. What we can control for is our own behavior. And so that's what the book is about saying, you know what, you want to put good out into the universe. You want to share your memories. You want to be intentional. And I think that that's the most important piece. If you never know where you're reaching somebody, and if they're not ready for whatever they're going through, I mean, and Rudy, we all know, like there might be aging parents or health issues or things going on where they're not ready to receive that, then, you don't need to harass them. But, maybe 3 months go by or 6 months go by or a year, or, you just want to follow up. There's nothing wrong in that either. But it's not like you need to do this daily or weekly. Like, why aren't you getting back in touch with me? It's like, hold on a second. You want to give people the time to respond, right?
Well, and in their own way, they may be processing something that they're not ready to.
Sure.
I think the best you can do, best advice I would give to Julian is to say, when they're ready to respond, they will respond, but don't disappear.
Sure. Yeah, because I think that's the most important piece in all of this is you want to give them grace also.
Exactly. And when they're ready in their time, they can do it.
Yeah. So.
And we have another question from Marcelo Antillon. Many relationships end due to misunderstanding. How to properly reconnect and rescue a relationship when you really value that person?
Sure. So, and I think, the same thing goes where, you can send them an email and say, listen, I know we've been out of touch. I think we had a misunderstanding. But then going back to gratitude and nostalgia and saying, you know what I've always appreciated about you was X. Do you want to get back in touch? I'd welcome that. And here's the thing, Rudy, that there was a great book that just came out by Dan Pink, The Power of Regret. And he did a survey of like 16,000 people across 100 countries. What do you regret the most? And the biggest regret was connection regrets. They regret not getting back in touch with that person because of a misunderstanding of all those kinds of things. And so in Pink's book, he's saying, you know what, if we look at our life as a photo negative, what do we regret in the life that we want? We want connection. So, I say to Marcella, put that out there, that you acknowledge that it was a misunderstanding. You're in a different place. This is what you always like about the person. You're open to reconnecting and see what happens, right? That's all you can do.
Exactly. You can't control what you can't control. But I think you have a very good point I want to emphasize that you made is that focus on the good times you had. Like, I miss the times we spent at Starbucks every Saturday morning just talking about politics. I just want you to know I miss those days. I have fond memories of those days. I
Yeah.
think that's the catalyst to get it started. And if those memories are great for them, then it might be the starting point to rebuild that relationship and that connection.
Yeah.
Steve Sackler has another comment also. Doesn't social media create the illusion that we know many more people, but really going deeper with fewer people is more fulfilling and more helpful to our careers?
Steve, that's a really great comment. And, one of my, I love when people say, let's connect, or let's connect on LinkedIn, right? When in reality, sometimes people want to say, let's collect. I want you to be part of my collection, right? And I think what Steve is talking about is there are people that you already know, like, and trust and as we think about our intentions, Steve, I think you're right in being able to, with intention, connect with those people with a level of consistency and then you'll feel happier. You will feel more nourished. And so there's a lot of layers to this, Steve. But yes, social media does give us this notion that we are more connected. It's like it's a dual-edged sword. Like, I'll be commenting with somebody either on Facebook or on LinkedIn with somebody that I haven't seen in 10 or 15 or 20 years. We're not going to get on the phone, but, they see that, on Facebook, with my kids, we're making Nutella crepes. And, I've got a high school friend that works for Nutella. And I'm like, of course, so it's a nice, connection, but, I don't know what she's doing and I don't know, what's going on in her life. But I would say to Steve that, it's one of those things where there are people within your sphere that you do want to do a deeper dive with. And yes, go for it. And I think it's up to all of us. Hey, you want to grab coffee? Do you want to grab a drink? Do you want to get breakfast? And I think that reflex, let's catch up, is one of the things that I wanted to get with this book, is to get people beyond all these barriers that they have to just being in the act of connecting and reconnecting is going to make you feel better.
I look at LinkedIn as a dance, going to the high school dance. There are some people you know really well, the friends that you go there with, the person you're going to dance with, and then there's all those other people in the high school. So I look at LinkedIn in the same way. They're there, but you're not going to connect with them necessarily to the same level that you would connect other people. But with the mingling that you do at the dance, you have the same thing on LinkedIn when you post, for example, and they find something you post interesting. It gives you an opportunity to build more deeper relationships if they're there than if they aren't there. And I guess we can get into this discussion, Jason, is there are some people that believe I only accept people who are like-minded. And I'm of the opinion I accept everybody. And
Right.
my reason for that is LinkedIn is a database that you can use. If you're looking for a job and you see somebody with AT&T and you see one of your friends is connected to AT&T, it's a way to try to build a database of potential relationships, because not necessarily people who are in the same field that you're in can be, say, helpful.
Yeah.
Your job may come from a CFO, not from a GC, may come from the president of the company, may come from somewhere else.
So, and Rudy, I'm glad you're bringing this up, because one of the things that I talk about in the book is network theory. So the foundational pieces of academic researchers that are studying the strength of relationships between people. And two of the most important pieces of network theory is, one, the strength of weak ties and the power of dormant ties. So what are your weak ties? So you're talking about this. Who are your weak ties? Your weak ties are, people, so you have strong ties, people that you're going to invite to your wedding, invite to your birthday party, like invite over to your house, close family, close friends. And then you have what you're talking about are weak ties, where it's a series of, professional relationships or relationships through a religious institution or a nonprofit or those kinds of things. What the research shows is that your weak ties are more likely to help in your career than your strong ties. And then there was another set of research done around dormant ties. People you lose touch with actually can be more helpful to you in your career because they go on to build new networks. So that intersection between dormant and weak is actually that nice nexus. But here's the thing, you have had to have had some kind of interaction with them. So assuming, Rudy, that you're already connecting and reconnecting, it's almost like 4 quadrants, current, dormant, strong, weak, that once you are interacting with those folks, yes, you can build out a broader relationship set to connect with people that you don't know. But I would say, and the research backed this up, that getting back in touch with somebody that already knows your value, knows your professional skill set, from a career perspective, can be more helpful. So that's how I think about it.
Well, it's always good to have different points of view. I've been on different panels where they say, no, only accept people that are like-minded, and that's their. And there's one guy I remember. I met him in a conference, and I did reach out to him, and his response was, "I'm sorry, but I don't know you." And I said, "Well, okay, we met at the conference. You said, to reach out. I did, but no problem. Have a nice life."
Oh my gosh. So, but you said like-minded. All right. So you said something really interesting, like-minded, right? And I think it's having that diversity of, you might know too many attorneys, or you might know too many engineers, or might know too many doctors, like one type of profession set. I think from a career perspective, being open to the totality of different types of people, makes us better. And so there's a lot of research on the power of strangers and the power of just having, the musician in your ear and the philosopher and the policy person and those kinds of things. So in terms of like-minded, Rudy, I am in agreement that, knowing different types of people and their different stories, very, very valuable, right? But focusing on the people that you already have interacted with is like level 1. What you're talking about is like a higher order level.
Well, yeah, there's a whole world out there to conquer. We have a comment from one of our LinkedIn audiences, Sirin. Thank you for your comment. The stories we tell ourselves influence us so much.
Absolutely. The
Very
stories,
profound.
yeah, the stories we tell ourselves influence us so much. And that gets back into the Bermuda Keep in Touch triangle, right? Where if we do a reframe on the positive impact and the positive value of the interactions we've had with people, that's your network. That is your network. We overuse the word network when we ignore network theory, right? And so the more that you can dive into strong ties, weak ties, dormant ties, current ties, that's the totality of your network. And here's the thing, these theories have been proved and reproven again and again. So your network is not some digital application, it's what's in here and what's up in here. And that is, and I love that comment because, if you take the social fortress, you take the Bermuda Keep in Touch triangle, there are so many limiting behaviors that we have when we think about our network, and that we're really not alone, but the things we tell ourselves make us feel lonely, right? And then we feel better after that interaction.
It's called drinking the Kool-Aid. You start believing in a certain thing and there's nothing else that will convince you. We have a comment from Marcella. She says, Jason, I've already bought your book. I can't wait to start reading it. I am sure it will be very useful for me.
Wonderful.
How can people buy your book? It's on Amazon, it's on Kindle.
Sure, it's on Amazon, it's on Kindle, it's an audio book. And at the end of the day, I wrote a book that would get read. So it's 125 pages. And for me, I wanted to, at the end of each chapter, I wanted to make sure that people had action items. So really, it's something that you can start with, you can always go back to. And at the end of the day, here's the thing, it's a process. These are habits we're talking about. And so for me, keep in touch is an aspiration. We're all trying to do a better job of keeping in touch, right? And that's the authenticity of the network, right? We're not just, running around to like any single type of event and any single type of person. It's like, hold on a second here. Let's take a look, honestly, of the people we've already interacted with. And why don't we start there, right? How are you doing? You know what? I appreciate you because all of those kinds of things are just more authentic, which we all want. We want sincerity. We want authenticity. Well, why don't we start with the people we already know, like, and trust? Go from there.
Jason, everything you wrote in your book, what you just said, brings something to mind. Nothing in your book is ever going to work, okay, unless you're kind, you're courteous, and you're sincere.
Right.
It's otherwise, any technique that you have, any technique that you talk about, it's not going to work. It becomes really a mechanical exercise.
Right. Right. No, I think in the last few years, just everything that's happened with the pandemic and all the things that are going on in our, in our worlds, I always valued kindness, but now I value kindness even so much more because you never know what someone's going through. And so how we each show up in a way where we can give people the benefit of the doubt, show respect, regardless of their status, right? We were talking before we went online of, I love saying hello to the crossing guard when I'm walking my son to elementary school. His name's Joe. And Joe and I, it's fun to see him, right? And I enjoy him because of his energy. I've been working from home now for 15 years. My mailman's name is Kenny, and I know Kenny's family, right? And I think you have to show up being kind and courteous because then that allows for all these other things to work.
There are people who think that they're above certain other people. And so they don't make the time to say hello. They think, who are you? That's a big mistake.
Yeah.
Everyone has a story that's interesting. You never know who, if anybody, is in a position who could help you. So it really becomes a question of don't think you're above anybody. My mom, who just recently passed, used to say, you're better than nobody, and nobody's better than you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And great words to live by,
Yeah, because what we're really talking about is, are you there to listen, or are you there to talk about yourself? So are you asking a question because you want to talk, or are you asking a question to really get to know what's going on with the other person? Right. And so it's also retraining our brains because, yes, we're, egocentrism is alive and well. We all want to talk about ourselves. Right. But at the same time, what's the most powerful thing that you can do with another human being is ask a question about themselves and actually hear the answer. It's joy.
Well, we have some more comments, and thank you so much, everyone, for the comments. It's a sign that's an interesting conversation. Steve Sackler says, Jason, looking forward to reading your book. Say hi to your wife. I interviewed her a couple of years ago on my podcast, Small World.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Steve.
The power of relationships, right? You never know when people are going to connect. There's only 6 degrees of separation.
Sure. And 6 degrees of separation is actually part of network theory.
Yes,
that's like one of the beginning pieces of network theory is 6 degrees of separation. So thank you, Steve.
Exactly. I also tend to think that there's like maybe 3 degrees of separation, because to me, sometimes the world seems to be even smaller.
It really is. It really, really is. But, getting back to, if you are a kind person, if you really care about the relationships that you have, then it becomes easier to be able to have introductions, be referred. They're like, hey, listen, this person's not going to sell you. It's okay. Or, you should talk to this person. Or if you're looking for an internal promotion, all of those things and being kind allows for you to have further conversations. So
we have some we're on a roll here with comments, okay? But we've got another one um, from one of our LinkedIn. Very insightful, and it's great that you gave the opportunity to hear and discuss. And another one from Marcella: is important to give yourself the opportunity to really get to know people. One of my dearest friends and I did not like each other when we met, but playing soccer in the same team. However, we both took steps, and today we really love each other. We're the best of friends.
Yeah, here's the thing. First impressions, yes, we often talk about the importance of a first impression, but if you can give someone the benefit of the doubt, you never know how they talk or their mannerisms or all those kinds of things, to be open to their perspective and how they approach things. It goes back to being patient. It goes back to, grace. It goes back to giving people the benefit of the doubt. So,
well, I've heard stories about married couples where the wife says, "Oh, I couldn't stand him. He got on my nerves when I first met him, but then he grew on me." Or it's the same thing, with the husband who says that. It's important to give people a chance. I think sometimes we're quick to turn somebody else off because there's something about them that maybe we don't like. You see a person with tattoos, and if you're anti-tattoo, you might think, who's that person? And you don't make the effort.
right. It's interesting you talk about tattoos, Rudy. I mean, because about 9 or 10 years ago, I actually had a TV appearance where they asked me, let's do a segment on should you show your tattoos in an interview. And so that, this is like 9 or 10 years ago. I'll have to send you the link. It was pretty funny. But actually, my opinion has changed. I think that, tattoos are much more accepted than they were 10 years ago. And so, yeah, I think that you can really make these prejudgments, which is also human, but it's kind of like, all right, what are my own preconceived notions and how I can get beyond that, right? So it's a reframe. You're constantly reframing how you're showing up with your interactions, your meetings, your conferences, all those kinds of things.
And that's part of unconscious bias. I interviewed Christopher Gross. He's an expert on unconscious bias. We have these biases before we even meet them, and we have to learn to get over them or get around them, right? And give people the chance.
Sure.
What I want to do, Jason, now is you are an expert on LinkedIn. You're an expert on how to use LinkedIn. Could you give our listeners some ideas of how you use LinkedIn?
Sure. So I think, I joined LinkedIn in January of 2004. So I've been on LinkedIn for 19 years now. And in the book, I proudly share my member number. When LinkedIn had member numbers, my LinkedIn member number is 141,272. So I'm the first 150,000 to join LinkedIn. LinkedIn has evolved, and I think you need to think about it in 3 ways, right? The first is to have a profile that is robust. When I say robust, that means have a professional headshot, have a photo beyond your headshot. There's that upper bar where you can actually show either the brand of the company you're working for or some kind of aspirational image. So everybody should have like those dual photos, professional headshot, and then a more aspirational image. Everybody should have a clear about section. It's like 2,000 characters, first person, writing your own bio, right? And so if you're in an organization, who are the stakeholders that are going to be coming to your profile and writing it in that perspective? If you've done things in your career where people can Google search you and find things, then yes, you can embed those URLs into your profile, videos that you might have done on YouTube, articles that you might have written. Your LinkedIn profile is a great place to aggregate all of those kinds of things. And then to have the clear dates on your profile. So that's part 1. Part 2 is, sharing content or resharing content, things that you care about, things that are going on in your professional sphere, might be leadership or management or an area of expertise. Good use of time. So you've got your profile, you've got your sharing content. And then the third piece is, what do you do with your connections? right? And so for me, in my LinkedIn chapter in my book, and one of the reasons I put LinkedIn at the end is that you need to know the academic theories behind why networks work before you can actually use LinkedIn's My Network function. And so for me, the My Network function is the most wonderful way to connect and reconnect with people that you already know, like, and trust. From university, have you connected with all of the folks that are in your class year or prior class years? And so you actually can go on LinkedIn and go to the university alumni section and put in the dates of graduation and say, you know what, who do I already know? Who did I graduate with? Same thing for grad school, law school, MBA, your PhD program. I think people ignore the fact that there are people they've already interacted with that they don't link in with enough. So making sure that if you know them in real life, that you should connect with them on LinkedIn. And I think the last piece is it's got a wonderful sort function. So like Rudy, right now we're doing an international event, you're in Mexico, right? So LinkedIn actually in the My Network piece allows for you to sort. I don't know if you did this or not, you could have put all right, who are all the people I know in Mexico City? And
I did that. I actually did that.
There you go. There you go. So you go to My Network and then you do an all field search on location. And then you can do first degrees of the people that you know and living in that current city. And so for me, before you travel for business, you might have some free time and say, you know what? I didn't realize I knew this person. So for me, it begins with intention. And then LinkedIn is only as good as what you ask it, right? And so, I almost feel like we're in this social media zombie apocalypse. I must connect with you. And, the reality is that, and there was a question on, is there a correlation between the quality of your relationships and the quality of your life? I say yes. And that also goes professionally. And so the My Network function allows for you to connect and reconnect with people. One last piece on the people within your own network is that if they've gotten a new job, if they've landed a new client, send them a specific note and congratulate them. So back to gratitude, LinkedIn's a great thing for you to just congratulate or celebrate somebody else. Don't use the auto-populated stuff that LinkedIn has you do. Send a personal note. So I think that if you think about your profile, sharing content, using the My Network function, and being intentional about celebrating the wins that are going on within your network, that's something that you can get in the habit of. That's not going to take an enormous amount of time, but rather a digital extension of what network theory already tells you to do. So those are my thoughts on LinkedIn.
I suggest that those of you who get the book really read that chapter. It's fascinating. It's really a technical approach to how to use LinkedIn. We've got some other questions, Jason, from Easton McFerrin. How do you keep in touch with professional contacts, past clients with whom there is a lack of nostalgia within the relationship?
Ooh, that's interesting. So if there's a lack of nostalgia, then what do you appreciate about them? Or you can also see if is there something going on in their current organization that made you think about them? Was there some type of current news? So if you don't have a personal connection with them, but you still interacted with them, you can still say, listen, I thought of you because you're working at this company. How are you doing? So if you don't want to take the personal approach, there's always the professional approach, just to say, you know what, I saw this and I thought of you. So
we have a question from Pablo Rodriguez. I interviewed Pablo on one of my previous channels, and how being a black belt helped me create a successful business. Black belt in
nice.
karate. Pablo's question is, and by the way, I went through all my Mexico contacts and LinkedIn and sent the invitation. Do you
Good.
think the quality of your relations has a correlation with the quality of your life?
Absolutely. Being around people that support you, being around people that care about you, being around people that don't judge you. Absolutely. And the social science shows this, that we have come to realize, in this, what the pandemic did to a lot of people is that connection is just as important as food and security and safety and shelter. And so what's so interesting, Rudy, is that I went to write a book about networks, right? And I came out on the other side realizing how important friendship is. And so, Rudy, I'm an accounting major. I did an MBA. I have a chapter on friendship. It's that important. So what the person's talking about is so key, that we need connection to survive. And those that live longer feel that connection at every age and stage in their life cycle. So yes, you will have a better quality of life based on the quality of the relationships you have.
Well, and I would echo that, Jason, because there are people who say, how can you build relationships in the middle of a pandemic? I can't travel. I can't go to places. In fact, with Zoom, with Teams, social media, you have an ability now to make more contacts than ever before. I've met 2 Mexican lawyers in Switzerland, met a great lady on entrepreneurship in Australia. It's amazing the more people I've met as a result of the pandemic through the use of these mediums that, develop some really interesting friendships.
I mean, Rudy, you and I met virtually. You and I met virtually. You're in South Florida. You're in Florida. I'm in DC. We didn't meet in person until the ACC annual meeting in Vegas. What? That was 3-4 months ago.
October.
It was October. Yeah. So, yeah. So
Steve Sleckler, I met online. Steve Sleckler, I met online. Pablo, sure. I met online. I mean, there are a lot of people. Matt Nolan, I've met personally over the years, but through the devices.
It goes to the stories we tell ourselves. It continually goes back to the stories that we tell ourselves. And the more that we can, and here's the thing, you're not going to achieve nirvana in a first conversation. And I think that's also resetting the expectation that you're not going to get someone to open up completely in a first interaction. And that's all it is either it's a first conversation, or if you're trying to rekindle a dormant tie, then it's all right, make the effort and see what happens.
It's all about the effort. It's all about the effort.
Sure.
Steve, we're running close to the end of the hour. Prabir Chakravarti, I'm sorry I butchered. Thanks, Jason, Rudy, for your very pertinent, insightful discussion, for the heartfelt shout outs to the ACC.
Oh, Prabir's online. That's awesome. He's over at the Association of Corporate Counsel headquarters in DC. Good to see Prabir. It's good to see that you're on with us. That's awesome.
So in summing up, I always like to have some takeaways.
Sure.
What are the 3 takeaways that you would tell our people?
So three takeaways. 1, open up a file if you don't have one already. It can be in an Excel file. It can be a Word file. It could be a PowerPoint. It could be a notepad. We get so wigged out by using words like CRM, customer relationship management, or CMS, contact management system. Just have a file and you can do it chronologically, like college and then grad school and then first job, but open up a file, first name, last name, and then begin to think about the memories you have of those people. So start a file. 2, start time blocking reconnection. Even if it's 15 minutes a day or 15 minutes a week, you move from I've been meaning to all right, it's now in my calendar. I'm going to share a memory with this person. So open up a file, start time blocking, and then 3, who are the first 3 people that you're going to reconnect with? So today is Friday, February 10th, 2023. Within the next week or the next 2 weeks, who are the first 3 people that you want to reconnect with based on the strategies that I'm talking about? That's your 1, 2, 3.
Very insightful. I think it all focuses on the fundamentals, right?
Yeah.
Nobody who's ever been successful, nobody who's ever gotten far in life can say that they've never had help from somebody,
Sure.
that they've never had help from a relationship.
Absolutely.
We do not live in an isolated world. And as much as people like to admit that they are, that they are self-sufficient, they're really not, right?
No, you can't do anything alone. And then it's recognizing that all of this is a team sport, and how you build your team and how you re-engage with your team. The more you lean into that, the more you're going to actually enjoy this. This can be actually a lot of fun. So I think it's fun.
I think it's fun. I enjoy building relationships. I enjoy talking to people. I just enjoy listening to people's story. We have we'll take one final question from Marcella. Is, can you give us your opinion about the importance of forgiveness in building solid relationships?
Oh, yes.
Oh my God, that's a topic for like a 2-hour conversation.
Oh my God. And some of us are hardwired to hold grudges, right? That's, and that's like it's the dark side of having a good memory, right? So the positive side of having a good memory is all these wonderful things that have happened. What's the dark side? It's the grudge. And the grudge is the biggest drag and drainer. I mean, something I feel, right? And it's something that I was like, wait a minute, I don't like that person. And then in the 10 years have gone by, I'm like, why do I not like that person? I forget. And it's kind of like, all right, was it that bad or was it a misunderstanding? And so that's something even I work on. And I'm, that's a daily thing I'm trying to get better at, because we're all human, right? And so, you're hitting on something that I think a lot about. It's not in the book, but oh my God, the uselessness of the grudge, the uselessness of because it does nothing for you, but hold you back and drain you. And so that's something I'm working on. I think it's a great question.
It's an energy drain, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think what it does from a selfish point of view, it allows the other person to continue to control you in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
An Irish, Steve says, an Irish friend of mine says it's called begrudgery.
It's true. So true.
So
that's awesome.
Again, Stephen, thank you for your comments.
Yes.
Jason, if your book is located, they can buy it directly from Amazon.
Sure.
It's in audio form, it's in Kindle form.
Yep.
If you ever want to order the book, just and reach out to Jason. He's available on social media, and he will accept your connection request.
Well, here's the thing. Yes, I'll accept your connection request, but one last thing on LinkedIn. When you do a connection request, to the extent that you can, just write a little note. Just write a little note. Right. I saw you here. And here's the cool thing is that then that message actually locks in between you and that other person. And so you can actually remind yourself of how you met and where you met and those kinds of things. So sending a quick note is actually a good use of time because it helps you remind yourself how you actually interacted with that person.
Well, that's good way to look at it too. I generally try to put a note when I'm in a webinar and there are people I'm listening to. I will just click connect and hey, great webinar, and they almost always say yes.
Sure.
I very seldom had. Well, I think we're going to sign off now on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter.